All right, everybody, I want to show you how to get started with your landing page assignment. This landing page is going to be a template for you to use for your first project, which is your portfolio website. So what I'm going to show you is the folder structure that you're going to need to have, the files that you'll need to have, and get you pointed in the right direction as far as the first landing page and the code. And I will include an example of all of this in your assignment so you can download it and use it to get started. The first thing is going to be the folder structure. And the folder structure is going to be set up like this. You'll have a folder or a directory called root, just like I have on my desktop right now. And if you open it up, you'll have another folder or directory within that called www. And then within that, you'll have your files. And the reason why we're doing this is how the server setup would be laid out if we upload this to a server. You'd have your root folder here, and then you have the www folder. And the www folder, anything that's in this, that's what's for public use, and that's where we're putting our files. So your folder structure should look like this. Within your www folder or your www directory, you'll have your files and associated folders for your landing page. Now, this example shows an about page and an index.html page. You will only be required to have an index.html page. If you have additional pages, I won't be looking at those at this time. When you finish your project, you will have several pages within here. But for this assignment, you just have to have index.html. The index.html, that is your main landing page. This is common through all website design and development. Your index page will always be the first page that a domain points to unless the server tells it differently. For our example, if the portfolio was aaronbacon.com, this page right here would be the first page to show up because it's the index. It's the beginning of the file structure. Then any other pages we would have to link to specifically in order to bring those pages up, and I'll show you how to do that here in a moment. Then we have our CSS folder and we have our image folder. All of your files, your CSS files and your image files, have to be linked externally. You can't link those directly through, oh, sorry, they have to be linked into a external folder like the setup is here. So that means you won't have any images in the same area as your index.html. You won't have any CSS in the same folder that your index.html is. They'll have their own separate folders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up brackets, and then from here, I want to import that folder structure so that you can see how it lays out. So I'm going to bring that root in. And then you can see we have our root, the www directory, and then our files, index.html and about.html, which remember, you don't have to worry about that for this assignment. Then we have our other folders with the files within those folders. This is your folder structure right here. Now let's take a look at index.html. This is a template to get you started. You do not want to turn this in. You should have more than just what you see here, and there's requirements in the assignment on what you should have. I also don't want to see you take what I do in this video and copy exactly what I do. I want you to explore HTML. I want you to try some new things using CSS or new imagery or even more elements than what I'm using in this example. So let's pull this up as it is right now. Nothing. We don't have any context, no imagery, no styling, nothing. All we have is title because we're using a title tag here, which is one of the requirements. Another one of the requirements is you have to have a description. And the description is what the page is about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through if I was doing a portfolio page, I would put a title for the first landing page. Now you do not have to use the same wording. You can call it whatever you want. Some of you have expressed doing something beyond a portfolio page, and that's totally fine. Just clear it with me before you do it. Now for the description, I'm going to change this to describe what this landing page is all about. There's our description. This viewport, if you look at the previous lectures, this is required because we're going to make sure that this page will work in all devices. And then I've already placed in my style sheets, which are both in external style or in external files. You don't have to worry about this. They work no matter the same way. I'll just go ahead and just for formality, I'll move the attributes around. Now I'm ready to get started. So I have a header, I have a main, and I have a footer. These are required. You have to identify what the header of your website is. You have to identify what the main area of your website is, and you have to identify your footer as well. What goes into this is up to you. I will not give you any limitations from here on out, meaning you can use these elements to your disposal. If you want to put your navigation in the footer, put it in the footer. If you want to put it in the main, put it in the main. If you want to put it in the header, put it in the header. Now, I will give you some guidance as far as how to utilize this. For example, generally, all main navigation is going to go into the header because that is what indexing search engines are going to look for. So if you're not going to put your main navigation into your header, you need to have a pretty good reason why. Now, since I have the About page in here, I'm using it as an example to link to. As I'm doing this, you'll see that the navigation is starting to show up here on the right. Because this is the only link that I have so far, I'm going to leave that as is, but I'm going to copy this and use some placeholders. And I might change these to portfolio. Maybe I'll put in there a blog. And then I think this is going to be a requirement for your project. You have to have a contact page. I can go ahead and change this information. Even though I don't have these pages built out yet, I can still change the title of this link. And instead of linking to about.html, I'm just going to put a placeholder here, which keeps the link active for me, but it doesn't go anywhere. And I'm going to do the same thing for blog. I'll do the same thing for the contact, but I can go ahead and update the title for each link. So I'll call this Aaron Bacon's blog, and then I'm going to say contact Aaron Bacon. All right, there's our navigation. Now, one of the other requirements is you have to have a title. Again, you want your title to be in your header if it is the main title. If you don't put your title in the main header, just give reasons why. I have seen it in the main section, and that's fine as well, as long as you don't have the title anyplace else on the site. For example, if I put a header tag in here with then I should not be putting the same headline here. The reason being is Google does not like when you use multiple headers. Well, let me back up. Most search engines don't mind when you use multiple headers. However, like H1 multiple times, like you can use multiple headers. That's not a big deal. But I'm specifically talking about the H1 tag. The H1 tag is usually reserved for a main title and a main title only. Now you could have multiple sections on a page, each having their own main title. That's fine. But for our purposes and for this assignment, I only want to see one H1 tag. You can have additional header tags, like you could do H2. That's totally fine. I'm just saying for this assignment, only have one H1 tag. Now, if you have it in the header, I don't want to see it down here, obviously, but you can take this out of the header. Like I said, I'm gonna let you do it freely and put it down here. Because we don't have a headline up here, it's totally fine to put it in the main navigation. So when I tell you like you have to have purpose for putting it in the main, that's fine as long as you don't have a title in here anywhere. Okay? In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and keep it like this. I'm going to keep my main title and my subheading down here. I'm also going to put in here an article element, if I spell it right. And that article element is going to hold my content. And I'm going to give this a little structure. So I'm going to put two divs in. And I'm going to signify one as left and another one as right. If you looked at one of the previous lectures, you saw how we started our class assignments. And we're going to use these to structure two containers for content. Now, I'm just going to start a paragraph here. And then I'm also going to put my image in here. Also take a look at how I'm indenting each new container or each new element. Oh, why is that doing that? I don't want it to be on the cloud. I might have to. Shouldn't be like that. Let's download those. Wonderful Apple integration there, already putting them up in the cloud when I don't want them there yet. Okay, so let's do this again. There we go. So now we have our image, we have some basic content, and we have a navigation. All of these things are required in the landing page assignment, and you'll see that in the assignment details. From here on out, we need to actually put some CSS in here, put some design into it. And so I'm going to use this file to do that, the main.css file. You can ignore the normalize.css file. You're free to use it. It will be in the template that I provide. What this does is this helps reset all browsers so that no matter what browser you use, it views the same way. But I'm going to add all of my custom CSS to main.css. I've already got some basic structure here for the body, which means the background color is white and all of the text color is black. That's essentially what that's telling me. Now I'm going to change this. I guess it's too late. That's even worse. Well, let's leave it at black. I will tell you this, the background color, it's not needed. White is actually the default of all browsers. Now I want to go in here and I want to give some structure to that left and that right. So I'm going to start my left class, and that's going to be for this container alone. and I'm going to say float left, and I'm going to give it a width of 50%, and then I'm going to do the same thing for the right side. Now, I have my two containers, left and right, but as you can see, my image is not staying within my browser window. And the trick to do that is to make sure that all images have a width of 100% of their container. Now it's contained. Now from here, I want to get a little bit more detailed, because right now we're kind of styled simplistically, and I want to have it a little bit more appealing to the eye. So let's start at the top. Let's start with our navigation. And I like to put my CSS in order of how it flows on the site. So I'm going to come up here and start with the nav. And I'm going to, let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we just do text align center, if it does anything. Yep, so it puts our navigation in the center. Now I'm going to call that navigation specifically. So I'm using the container that it's in, which is a nav element, and then the anchor tag. Here's the nav element, and then here's the anchor tag. And the reason why I'm doing this is if I add another link anywhere in my site, it will not use this same style sheet. I can keep them separate. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that default blue color, and I'm also going to get rid of the underline, and I'm going to make them all caps. So let's go ahead and make them all caps. And then that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Oh. It should have worked. Let's see what's going on here. So this is called the developer inspector, and you can pull this up on any Chrome or Firefox browser by just hitting right click, and you can do view page source, or you can do inspect, which is what I'm doing because it brings it up down here and I can kind of walk through where it is on the page. And so I'm going to go to my element here and see why this is not working. Okay, so why isn't this taking on, maybe because I'm doing this wrong. So let's try this. There we go. I was using the wrong identifier. So capitalize just means that it'll capitalize the first letter of every word, and I meant to do uppercase. So there we go. We have that in place. And then we also said that we were going to remove the underline. So we want to do text decoration and just put none. And then we also wanted to get rid of that color. So we're going to change the color, and for now, we'll just leave it at black. Perfect. Now, I don't like that serif font, so let's change the font family to sans serif. And let's go ahead and give it a weight. We'll give it a weight of 900, makes it bold. And let's go ahead and change the size of it too. And because it's our main navigation, let's make it 21 pixels. Perfect. Now we'll see how it's coming together, but this is all pretty close together. So I'm going to add some spacing to here as well. And to do that, I'm going to put a margin to the left and the right. And I do this by using this short code This, when you signify margin and padding in this manner, what you're saying is the top and the bottom are 0, the left and the right are 12 pixels. I could do this, margin left 12 pixels and margin right 12 pixels, but it's the same thing. I can even put a margin on the top and the bottom if I want to, and it'll add that. You can't see at this moment because this is set to display in a block, so it's only going to give you our left and our right margins. What I want to do is take this back to 0, but then the placement is fine, but we're going to take our first look at how to set this up so that it responds within a mobile environment gracefully. So if I resize my page into a mobile environment, I want to make sure that my margins respond that way as well. And so what I'm going to do is I have a left and a right for each one of these links. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have actually 8 margins that I'm going to declare. So I'm going to change this to 1%. And what that means is the left and the right margins should have 1% width of the overall width. So if I take this and add it up, I have 1% here, 1% here, 1% here, 1% here, and so on. That's a total of 8%. That means that this area and this area that's occupying the window is going to be 92%. We're going to do this again down here, but I want to let you know that as you start to add variables here, you're taking away from the overall space. That's why I like to use percentages, because if you use absolute pixels, you can't define the pixel because it's always going to change based off of what device they're using. Like this one is a custom one at 1004 pixels wide. But if I switch to, let's say, an iPhone, it's 414 pixels wide, but my margins are still 1% of the overall width. All right, now that I've got my navigation set up, I'm going to go ahead and jump down and get this area cleaned up. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and make my headings centered. Well, maybe. Let's try this again. And this is an example of how you can combine more than one element with the same style sheet. I'm just separating these by a comma. And then I'm going to make the H1 tag a little bigger, but I'll keep it with that serif font. And then my H2 tag, I will make that 32 pixels. And I'm actually going to change this, and let's make this all lowercase. Beautiful. Now I want this to be a little bit tighter, so I want this subhead to be closer to this headline. And to do that, I'm going to change the margins of both the H1 and the H2. So the H1 bottom margin, I'm going to change to 0. And the H2 top margin to 0. Now, the line height is closer together. Perfect. And then let's get down to to this area again. Now, all we've done is, excuse me, define a left and a right side, but we have no padding here. Everything butts up right up against the browser window. I actually don't mind that it does it with the image, because when images go full width like that, I actually like it. But we do need something here. So what I'm going to do is, on the left side, I am going to put a padding in there. Now, let's do padding, and we're going to do 0 on the top and bottom, but on the left and right, let's put 5%. Okay? Now, what just happened? Why did it break like that? Well, similar to what we're doing up here, I just told the padding for the left side container to get 5% and 5% of the overall width of the page. However, I'm telling this to be 50% of the overall width. So what I've done is I've taken my 50% on the left, my 50% on the right, and I've actually added 10 more percent to the overall width. 50 plus 50 plus 10 is, anyone? 110%. So I'm actually breaking the width, and I'm going beyond 100%. I'm actually trying to go 110%. So how do we fix that? Well, we can remove our padding, or we can lower the width of either the left side or the right side. In this case, I'm going to lower it on the left side by 10%, because we have 5% on the left and 5% on the right. So I'm going to take this down to 40%, and we now still have a left and a right positioned equally, but the left side has a padding when the right side does not. And that's how we get away with that. Now let's fill this up with a little bit more context. So I'm actually going to go to one of my websites and steal some of my own content. And let's do this. That way we have some placeholder in here, and we can get a better idea of what the page is going to look like. And go ahead and set my paragraphs up right. All right, now, one thing I want to point out to you, see how small this font is? So let's inspect it and see what the browser is putting this font as. And I'm not seeing it declare a size. Anyone else see that? So I want to make sure that this font is this is consistent between all browsers. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my main CSS, and in my body tag, I'm going to declare an overall font for the whole site. This will be interpreted if there aren't other style sheets that declare a font size, like this one here. And so what I'm going to say is I'm going to say font size 16 pixels. Now, nothing's changed yet, so it's not interpreting it. Let's make sure that that's not already 16 pixels. And I'm just going to change this. Yep, that's what it was. So that's already 16 pixels. That's pretty small. So 16 pixels is a standard. You don't want to have anything smaller than 16 pixels because it can be hard to read, especially as browsers, devices, and resolutions continue to increase. So we have actually been using 18 pixels as the lowest. And I'm actually going to go a step further and say that 21 pixels should be the lowest for my document. So this means that unless I declare the font size specifically to an element, my lowest font will be 21 pixels throughout my entire site. And I'm good with that. I think that will suffice, and we have some nice padding on the left and the right here. with my image, let's go ahead and give that image a little caption. So I'm going to use this little small tag here and put Aaron Bacon, he's folding his arms. Not bad, right? So now we have a caption with a image, and it's placed over to the right. Now let's see what happens when we degrade the browser and look at this in multiple devices. So here's what it looks like in iPhone 10. We could rotate it. That's what it looks like. It's keeping the margins no matter what browser we're in. See how we still have 5% here and 5% of the overall width. Let's take a look at the iPad. Looks pretty good. Now, one thing that I'm concerned about is on small devices like the iPhone, when I'm looking at it in landscape, I'm wasting a lot of space right here. And then I'm not utilizing the left side as clean as I should. So what I want to put in here is a media query. And the media query will help me define what my styles do based off of the device that I'm using. So your media query will help you define what styles you want to use based off of the width of the device. It's always going to be the width. And to define a media query, that was a little weird. To define a media query, you can do this in your main CSS, and I like to put them at the bottom. But you'll just start it with @media. And then we need to declare if it's a screen. If I know how to spell screen. And then we're going to say max width. Oh, that's not right. Hang on, I got a shortcut. There it goes. Okay, so let me take this out for a second. What we're doing is we're defining our media query specifically to screen resolution only. You can do them for print, you can do them for device. What we're doing is we're going to define a media query specifically on screen. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a max width. You can do a max width, you can also do a minimum width. It's up to you on how you want to do your media queries. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set one at a max width for small devices. So I'm going to say if the width is essentially 780 pixels or less, so the max width of that device is 780 pixels, then utilize the following style sheets. And for us, for this purpose, I'm going to copy the left and the right because we're just going to reset these. And I don't have to pull in everything. All I'm going to do is set the width of each of these to 100%. Now let's clean this up. And I don't need the right because it's actually going to be the same. So I can just use one. So now I'm saying no matter if it's the left or the right, if the device that they're using has a max width of 780 pixels, then these elements should always be 100% width. So let's put it to the test. Looks like it's doing it, but then there's a little bit of an issue here. So let me show you what's going to happen. If we resize this, once we get down to 780 pixels, which you'll see it right here, those two containers go left and right. But then we have something funky going on where we have to scroll left and right. Why is that happening? Well, remember before when we gave this a padding of 5% on the left and the right? That padding is still there, but I've given its container 100% width. So what I've done is I've said 100% width plus an extra 10% because there's a 5% and a 5% padding on the left and the right. So we need to accommodate for that. So I can do one of two things. I can break these out again and set up the width so that it accommodates the padding, or I can define the overall width, or sorry, the overall padding of the entire site. For our purposes, I just want this to have the padding because I actually like that the image goes the full width. So I'm going to break these out again. And the right will stay 100%, but the left will have to accommodate this padding here. So what's 100% minus 10, because I have 5% on each side? 90. And now it's only doing that because I'm forcing it to, but you'll see that padding on the left and the right. It's a cleaner look. So now it degrades beautifully based off of the browser. So what I've just shown you will get you started for your landing page for your first assignment. Now, what I haven't gone into detail about is your footer. Now, your footer can be maybe an additional navigation. It could be social media links. It could be a map to find where your portfolio is located in the United States or across the globe. It could be contact information. Your footer is generally going to be secondary information to the overall site. It's also, just like the header, generally seen on every single page. I'm not going to do the footer. I want you to take a step and do that on your own. If you have questions, reach out to me. I'll be happy to help you. And if we need to, we'll set up a lab to walk through all of this. But I will give you the tools to get started. You can use this tutorial to get you on your way. And then if there's something that's challenging you, or if you're interested in learning something else, reach out to me.